Hi everyone, this is Yuki. This video is a short strategic guide for the game Commands and Colors Napoleonics regarding hand management. I know that people usually talk about hand management in Commands and Colors games, but many new players don't really understand what it is because it is an intuitive but vague concept that is kind of hard to explain. I will try my best to dissect it into manageable pieces and will likely require many videos, but I hope we can eventually get to a point where most of you get at least an intermediate understanding of what hand management is about. Many people may disagree with this, but I believe that Commands and Colors games are first and foremost card games, and if you were to put a percentage on it, I'd go as far as saying that this game is 70% about cards. So naturally, there will be a lot to say about the cards in this game. And the videos about cards might eventually end up being its own series, but we will see. So for today's video, we're only going to focus on one concept. These card videos will most likely be shorter than my tactics videos because I don't want to overwhelm you with too many concepts all at once. So each video would just focus on one thing. And for this video, we will just focus on the section cards in the command deck. So just make sure that we're on the same page. So the command deck that we'll be discussing today is the blue-backed command deck that comes with the base game. And this is the deck that most people have. I can talk about the green deck and the red tactician deck at some point, but because there are optional contents that come in a later expansion, I would much rather save it for later. Anyway, let's get started. To understand card play, we first have to understand what's in the command deck. There are two kinds of cards in the command deck, the section cards and the tactics cards. The section cards order units based on location and require your units to be in specific sections, whereas tactic cards order units based on unit types and specific situations, such as first strike, leadership, and cavalry charge. To make the video short and digestible, today's video will only deal with section cards. We will talk about the tactics cards in a later video. So in the blue deck that came with the base game, there are 48 section cards out of 70 cards in total. Just looking at the deck makeup, we can see that section cards make up 69% of the deck. And for reference, I have a comparison of section card percentages from the command decks of other games in the series. In this table, I'm ranking the games from the highest section card percentages to the lowest, and we can see that Napoleonics is certainly pretty high up on the list. So what does this mean for the players? Usually when a game's command deck is more section restricted, the more cautious you have to be with managing your cards. So as a general rule, tactics cards are more flexible than section cards, even though they may sometimes have specific unit type or situation requirements. But if a deck is more section restricted cards, that means that your strategies are more fragile and they're more easily interrupted by your opponent's card play and just luck in general. So you should be more conservative with your hand management. So let's look at an example. Let's say that you're attacking on a flank with multiple units, such as on this map, let's say the right flank. You really don't want to run out of gas when your units are in the middle of pushing that flank. If you're dedicating units to push, then you should be conservative and have enough cards that can consistently order them for several turns. You do not want to get in a situation where you're at the mercy of the new cards that you draw at the end of each turn, which is something that card game players like to call top decking. Sure, it's great when you top deck what you need exactly, but the more section cards the game has, the less likely that you can get away with this kind of wishful thinking. So Napoleonic is definitely one of the games where you should not take risks with your cards. For successful active play, you need command continuity, which means you can order the units that you want to order, and they're usually the same units for a couple of consecutive turns if you're attacking. Assuming that you're the French player in this scenario, just based on the hand that you have here, would you open the game with attack right flank cards and push your units into the town? or near the town, I guess, on the right flank. So in this hand, you have one right flank card, a recount in force, which can only order one unit on the right side, so technically not really a dedicated right flank card. And then all the other cards are either irrelevant or for the other sections. So if you really want to have a successful push, you need at least a couple of turns where you continuously order the units you're attacking with. So if you put them into enemy territory with the attack right flank cards, then you have to wish for at least 2 more cards that can order them. And as soon as that continuity breaks, your opponents can just completely annihilate these units and just gain some free points. So in this situation, I would definitely not open with the attack right flank cards. I will maneuver the units in other parts of the map, maybe to gain more passive advantages, such as increasing the threat zone coverage like we have shown in one of our other videos. And when eventually I have enough cards that allow me to push on a specific flank, then I would consider attacking or pushing on this flank. And obviously, being conservative with your hand management does not mean that you should always follow a really strict rule about waiting until you have everything to attack, because some of the scenarios simply don't allow you to do that. But the main point is, you would much rather fight with the cards that you already have than to count on drawing the card that you wish you had, if that makes sense. If you remember the table that we showed earlier, some of the commands and cards can have a very low section restriction in the command cards, such as the Ancients. So if you do come from commands and colors and Ancients, you might need to modify your strategies, because in Ancients you can actually push on a flank when you don't have any other cards for that flank, but you just keep drawing the relevant cards for that flank in the next few turns, and you eventually still win that flank anyway. There's a much less of a chance that you can get away with that here. So if you are one of those players, I would advise you to reconsider your card play strategies. Some of you may be asking, isn't this section restriction symmetrical for the opponent as well? Meaning that if I push on a flank, then the other player must also have their appropriate section card to react on that flank? That is true, but you have to keep in mind that in this game, the defenders usually have the combat advantage. So it actually requires the attackers to have more cards in the section in order to have the same kind of combat effect. For example, defending infantries usually fire from a standing position where they do not have to move. So the number of dice being rolled per attack is higher than the attacker, which is moving. So even when the defender only reacts with one appropriate section card in a section, that is still a lot of attack power compared to the attacker who is moving and firing. So yes, the defender still needs to have the appropriate section cards, or cards that order that specific section, but they don't necessarily need to have as many section cards as the attacker. If we go beyond the ranged attack, there's still the battling back for melee attack, which is automatic for the defender. I know the defender has a slight disadvantage in that, depending on how successful the attackers are in the first melee. But because it's the free attack that does not cost any command cards, this is yet another defender advantage that requires the attackers to spend more resources. Okay, so here's a summary of what we talked about today. So first, command continuity is preserved by hand management. More section cards in the deck means more section restriction, and more section restriction means it's harder to preserve command continuity. And we have shown some examples of that. And I think the biggest takeaway here for you to remember is that you should always play with the cards that you already have, and don't rely on the card that you hope to draw. And the second main point is that attacking requires high command continuity, and attacking units cannot sit in the open and expect to survive, which means that you should try to build a hand before you push on a flank, so that your attacking units do not have to rely on the card that you draw, so that they don't sit in the open and get eliminated by the enemies before your attack can succeed. And the other reason that attacking requires high command continuity is that defenders usually have the advantage in terms of combat in this game, and they end up costing the attackers more command cards. One of the main reasons is that stationary ranged attack gives more attack dice per command card, just because the defenders usually don't have to move, but the attackers have to. And of course, we're assuming that we're comparing similar command cards ordering similar units in this case. And the other defender advantage is that battling back does not cost any command cards. It's automatic action when units get melee attacked. And lastly, defenders usually have terrain advantage, and this also ends up costing attackers more command cards and require them to have high command continuity just because it takes longer to eliminate units that are protected. Okay, this is all I have for you today. And obviously this is a very basic introductory discussion about a very large topic. And you guys can let me know if you want to see more of this kind of videos where it's more esoteric and abstract than, tactical videos with examples. I mean, I can certainly do both, but it's helpful for me to know which kinds of videos are more helpful for you guys. So yeah, please feel free to comment and let me know what you think. And as always, feel free to join my Discord for Commands and Colors games and have the link in the video description. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.